You think of yourself as a pretty rational person, right? You weigh the pros and cons, you look at the evidence, and you make logical choices based on facts, not feelings. You trust your judgment because you believe you see the world objectively, just as it is. But what if I told you that you have a blind spot? A blind spot so deep and powerful that it convinces you you're the only person in the room who isn't biased. It's a mental glitch that warps your most critical judgments about your career, your money, and your relationships, all while whispering in your ear that you're seeing things with perfect clarity. This isn't just a hypothetical. It's a documented feature of the human mind called the bias blind spot. You can think of it as the mother of all biases, the one that lets all the others run wild in the shadows of your mind. By the end of this video, you won't just know what this blind spot is. You'll see how deep it runs, and you'll get the tools to start seeing yourself and the world around you more clearly than ever. The bias blind spot is our tendency to see how biases affect other people's judgment while completely missing how they affect our own. It's a strange quirk of the mind that makes us all amateur psychologists when we look at others, but totally oblivious when we look in the mirror. We can easily spot when a friend is in a toxic relationship, blinded by affection. We see when a coworker takes all the credit for a team project, driven by their ego. We can point out the political pundit on TV who is obviously twisting the facts to fit their narrative. We see their biases in crystal clear high definition. But when it comes to our own lives? Well, that toxic relationship isn't toxic, it's just complicated. We believe we deserved the credit for that project because our contribution was objectively the most important. And we believe the political commentator who agrees with us isn't biased. They're just speaking the plain, unvarnished truth. We see ourselves as objective observers, while everyone else is looking through a distorted lens. This is the heart of the problem. The belief that we are less biased than everyone else. So what's the big deal? A little overconfidence in our own judgment seems harmless, but it's not. This single blind spot is a silent saboteur, working against you in every area of your life. In your career, it can lead to terrible decisions. A manager, blind to their own bias, might hire someone who reminds them of a younger version of themselves, passing over a much more qualified candidate. They might shoot down a brilliant but unconventional idea because of an unconscious love for the status quo, all while telling themselves it's a sound business decision. Research shows that cognitive biases mess with major decisions in management, finance, and medicine all the time, often with huge consequences. That CEO who launched a product nobody wanted, they were likely a victim of their own blind spot, convinced of their visionary genius, while ignoring all the evidence that they were dead wrong. When it comes to your money, the bias blind spot can be ruinous. You might watch other people fall for get-rich-quick schemes and think, how could they be so dumb? While you pour your savings into a risky stock based on a gut feeling and a few articles that just confirm what you want to be true. You see the bias in their decision, but only logic in your own. You credit your financial wins to your superior intellect and blame your losses on unforeseeable market forces, a classic symptom of the self-serving bias, which is a key pillar of the blind spot. And in our personal lives, it can create painful divides. It causes communication breakdowns because we're so busy judging others that we can't see our own faults. It stops us from growing, because if you can't see your own biases, you can't see what you need to improve. It's the reason you can have a political argument with a family member where you both walk away absolutely convinced that you're the rational one, and the other person is hopelessly biased. You both can't be right. Or more accurately, you're probably both trapped in the echo chamber of your own minds, unable to see the blind spot that's keeping you from finding common ground. The man who helped us understand all this, Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman, explained that our minds have two systems. System 1 is fast, intuitive, and emotional. It's your gut reaction. System 2 is slower, more deliberate and logical. The bias blind spot exists because we almost always believe our judgments come from that cool, calculated system too, when in reality, most of our daily decisions are driven by the fast, automatic, and error-prone System 1. We are constantly mistaking the voice of our intuition for the voice of reason. But what if you could change that? What if you could learn to recognize when System 1 is at the wheel? What if you could peel back the filter of your own biases and finally see the world and yourself with real clarity? What if you could become a better thinker, a better leader, a better partner? You can. And the journey starts by exposing the individual biases that build the walls of our biggest blind spot. We have to unmask them, one by one. Let's start with the master illusionist itself, the bias blind spot. As we said, this is the core belief that you're less biased than other people. It's not just a feeling, it's a measurable fact. Study after study has shown that most people, a statistical impossibility, rate themselves as being less biased than the average person. Think about the last time you were in a traffic jam. You probably looked at the driver weaving recklessly between lanes and thought, "What an idiot." That's how accidents happen. But when you switch lanes to get ahead, you have a good reason. "My lane was ending," or "I'm a good driver, I can handle it." You see their behavior as a flaw in their character. They're an idiot driver. You see your identical behavior as a rational response to the situation. That's the bias blind spot in action, and it's fueled by another more specific bias. It's called the fundamental attribution error. This is our habit of chalking up other people's actions to who they are, but attributing our own actions to the situation we're in. When a colleague misses a deadline, we think they're lazy or disorganized. When we miss a deadline, it's because we were overloaded and the expectations were just unreasonable. They failed because of their character. We failed because of our circumstances. This error constantly reinforces the bias blind spot. By judging others harshly while giving ourselves a pass, we build up this mental image of ourselves as more rational and competent than everyone else. We become the logical hero in a world full of flawed, irrational characters. Next up is the self-serving bias. This bias is the ultimate bodyguard for our ego. It's our tendency to attribute successes to our own skill and intelligence, while blaming failures on bad luck or other people. When you ace a test, it's because you're smart. When you fail, it's because the professor wrote unfair questions. When your favorite team wins, it's because they played a brilliant game. When they lose, it's because the refs were biased. This bias creates a distorted highlight reel of your life, where you're the hero of every success and the victim of every failure. Over time, this skewed view hardens into a deep belief that you're simply more competent than you actually are. Think about a startup founder whose company hits it big. Ask them why, and they'll point to their brilliant vision and tireless work ethic. Now imagine a founder whose company fails. Ask them why, and you'll hear about a brutal market, a surprise competitor, or a lack of funding. The successful founder is probably downplaying the role of luck and good timing. The failed founder is likely downplaying their own strategic mistakes. They aren't necessarily lying. Their minds are automatically spinning a story that protects their ego. And here's the connection. You can hear the excuses of the failed founder and know that's what they are, excuses. But when you think about your own setbacks, your reasons feel completely valid. They feel like legitimate explanations. That is the blind spot. The self-serving bias creates the distortion, and the blind spot prevents you from seeing that distortion in yourself. The next bias is sneaky because it feels the most like pure, simple truth. It's called Naïve Realism. This is the belief that you see the world exactly as it is. And because of that, any rational, fair-minded person should see it the same way. If they don't, Well, they must be uninformed, irrational, or biased. Naive realism is what pours gasoline on the fire of political polarization. People on both sides of an issue truly believe they are just responding to the facts. When they meet someone with an opposing view, they don't just think that person is wrong. They conclude they must be brainwashed by the media, blinded by ideology, or just not smart enough to get it. They believe they are seeing reality, while their opponent is the biased one. This is the ultimate fuel for the bias blind spot. If you genuinely believe your perception of the world is a perfect reflection of reality, then by definition, you can't be biased. A bias is a distortion of reality. If you believe your view has no distortion, then you must believe you have no bias. Think about a simple disagreement with a partner, like the right way to load the dishwasher. You see your method as the most efficient and logical way. It's not just an opinion. It feels like an objective fact. When your partner does it differently, it's baffling. Why would anyone put the forks there? You are experiencing naive realism. You fail to see that your partner also has a view that feels just as objectively real to them. The argument isn't about one person being right and the other being irrational. It's about two different subjective realities clashing. If naive realism is the belief that we see the world clearly, confirmation bias is the engine that works 24/7 to keep it that way. It's our tendency to search for, interpret, and remember information that confirms what we already believe. It's the little voice in your head that says, "See? I knew it," while turning a blind eye to all the evidence that says you were wrong. Once you form an opinion, your brain stops acting like an impartial scientist and starts acting like a lawyer building a case for a client it already represents. If you think a certain stock is a good investment, you will unconsciously click on articles that praise it. You'll interpret ambiguous news as a positive sign, and you'll easily dismiss any information that suggests it's a bad idea. Let's say you're buying a new car and you've decided on a particular model. Suddenly, you'll start seeing that car everywhere. You'll read reviews and your eyes will glide over the negative comments to focus on the positive ones. You'll give more weight to the reviewer who loved the car and dismiss the one who had complaints as being too picky. You aren't doing objective research. You're on a mission to validate a decision you've already made. This directly feeds the bias blind spot by creating a powerful illusion of objectivity. You think you're being informed because you did the research. But your research was just a hunt for validation. Confirmation bias creates a feedback loop. Your belief leads you to find evidence, which strengthens your belief, which makes you even more certain that you're right and not biased at all. Okay, so our minds are a minefield of biases working together to convince us we're immune. It sounds pretty bleak. But the fact that you're aware of this is the single most important step toward clarity. Overcoming these biases isn't about becoming perfectly objective. That's impossible. It's about developing habits of mind that let you question your own certainty. It requires real, ongoing effort. Here are 5 practical strategies you can use to start unmasking your own blind spots. First, and most important, abandon the myth of your own objectivity. Accept, right now, that you are biased. Everyone is. Our brains are wired with mental shortcuts to get through the day. As the writer Anais Nin said, "We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are." Intellectual humility isn't about thinking less of yourself. It's about being less certain of what you know. It's the habit of asking, "What might I be missing here?" Or, "How could I be wrong?" Just admitting that you could be wrong opens the door for your logical system, too, to step in and double-check what your gut is telling you. You can't fix a problem you can't see. Start looking back at your recent decisions, good and bad, like a detective investigating your own thought process. Why did you really buy that expensive gadget? Was it a true need, or were you swayed by clever marketing? Why did you get into that argument? Were you really responding to the facts, or was your ego just feeling defensive? Look for patterns. Do you always underestimate how long tasks will take? Do you stick with a failing project just because you've already invested so much time? By identifying the patterns, you can start to spot the biases behind them. Since your brain is designed to agree with itself, you have to outsource the job. Make a real effort to listen to smart people who disagree with you. If you lean one way politically, don't just consume media that confirms your view. Read a thoughtful argument from the other side. If you're a leader convinced of a new strategy, don't just listen to your supporters. Appoint someone to be the devil's advocate, whose only job is to poke holes in the plan. This is tough. It feels uncomfortable. But it's one of the best ways to find your blind spots. This is a powerful technique you can do all on your own. Before making a big decision, take a few minutes and forcefully argue against the choice you're about to make. Don't just list a few weak counterpoints. Try to build the strongest possible case for the other side. This is sometimes called steel manning. If you're about to take a new job, spend 10 minutes arguing passionately for why you should stay put. If you're about to invest in something, make the most compelling case you can for why it's a terrible idea. This exercise forces you to use your deliberate, analytical system to thinking and breaks you out of the tunnel vision that bias creates. Many of our biases thrive on speed. Our fast, intuitive thinking is what gets us into trouble. So one of the simplest fixes is to just slow down. When faced with a big decision, don't go with your gut. Pause. Give yourself time. This creates the space for your logical brain to catch up. Better yet, create systems of accountability. Talk through a major decision with a mentor or a trusted friend who can offer an outside view. In a team, create formal processes so big choices aren't made on the whim of one person. By making your thinking visible to others, you invite them to spot the blind spots you can't. Unmasking your cognitive blind spots isn't a one-time fix. It's a lifelong practice of self-awareness, humility, and critical thinking. It's the process of learning to question your own gut feelings and accept the uncomfortable truth that your perception of reality isn't reality itself. It's a construction, shaped by hidden assumptions and mental shortcuts. The goal isn't to get rid of your fast, intuitive thinking. That part of your mind is essential for navigating daily life. The goal is to develop the wisdom to know when to trust it and when to challenge it. To know when a decision requires the slow, effortful work of your more logical mind. By acknowledging your blind spots, seeking out disagreement, questioning your certainty, and slowing down, you can begin to lift the veil. You can go from being a passive victim of your mind to an active participant in your own life. You can make better decisions, build stronger relationships, and most importantly, start to see the world and yourself with a new kind of clarity. If this video gave you an aha moment about how you think, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell for more deep dives into the psychology of self-improvement. And finally, share this video. You might just help someone else spot a blind spot they never knew they had. Because the first step to seeing more clearly is admitting we all have them.